Okay, we'll do a quick mic test. All right, can you guys hear me? Okay. It's borderline no mic, but I'm gonna try to save my voice so I can. I've talked a little bit further this afternoon on a few things. It's funny. I've got to let you guys know that when I get up here, can you turn it down just a hair? Thank you. When I get up here, I kind of go. I'm kind of winging it. I really feel like one of the things about public speaking is that it's important to just kind of go with the flow and read the audience and not have some kind of crazy script. But I do occasionally need to make some notes to make sure I might need to reference them. Because the number one fear, I don't know if you guys know this, is public speaking for humans. It's like literally the number one fear. And so I actually get up here and do a lot of these things, and I don't really enjoy it a lot of times, to be honest with you. I know people who know me know I like to talk, but talking a lot in at a dinner or something like that is different than talking in a big group of people, like my heart's pounding and all that. But I say that because when I do this, I'm like, it's a little different than normal, because I just get up and I kind of go. Because I do know what I'm going to say, I think, for the most part. So bear with me a little bit. And in the spirit of Boise, which we'll talk about a little bit later, well, first I want to share one story. I don't want to forget this. This morning, I went and spoke at a juvenile delinquent home. How would you say? Detention center, yeah. I spoke at a juvenile detention center. And again, it's something I feel like it's my duty. It's something that if you're doing something like in the video you guys saw and you're making a difference in kids' worlds, it's part of your responsibility to go out and not just sell product and do things of that nature. It's also about speaking to the kids. But I thought what was interesting today that really blew my mind, and it wasn't planned at all, is that the kids were coming in the room, and one of the gentlemen who actually took me out, I said, I just need a minute to is there any place quiet I can go to just breathe a little bit before I speak? And the gentleman, without realizing it, made me really nervous. It was a total accident. But he was like, hey, just so you know, because I was like, who am I going to be talking to? What level of situations is going to be happening in this audience? And this guy rattled through why some of these kids were there, and it was insane. I was like, whoa, this is really heavy stuff. And what it made me realize that I wanted to share with you guys is when I finished speaking, and there was a situation that took place where the place went on lockdown, but it was fine. It was actually fine. But the more of the point is that it makes you realize how important what we do is, and why I'm up here talking to you, but more importantly, talking to those kids this morning. Because it was really, you realize why this is happening. Because sometimes you need a little gut check, a little, something to happen in your life. And, we've been on this hustle opening this space and the Boise thing, and it's been really insane. But at the same time, this morning I was like, oh, okay, this is why we're here. This is why this is happening. This is what it's about. Because these kids shouldn't be here. How do we keep them from going there? Because I was almost one of those kids, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about. So I wanted to share that with you. I wasn't planning on saying that, but I wasn't planning on this morning being as entertaining / insane and informational and educational. So I did make some notes, and in the spirit of Boise, I had a little bit of help with my friend Rob and my friend Jamie. Where's Jamie? There he is, way back there. So this is actually what I think is really funny about Boise. I didn't plan on making any notes. And then I had this giant roll of paper. This is where I start winging it. And it was in my office because we were using it to do work. And all of a sudden, Rob and Jamie separately were like, you don't know what you're going to say, do you? Pretty much was what was. I'm like, not really. I'm going to wing it. And then both of Rob and Jamie were like, well, we'll help you out a little bit. So this is in the spirit of the analog movement and family entertainment and working together as a group and what this whole thing is about, rather than me, we. These guys, I just get such a kick out of this. these guys sat on the floor with me. Rob had knee pads, and we made these notes. And this became like kind of the joke where I was like, and then it was like by the time it was like midnight, and I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to get this on a cue card. This ain't gonna happen. So I just was like, screw it. I'm gonna walk on my notes and talk on my notes, and hopefully I don't have to reference them. And if I do, it doesn't look very obvious. And then I'm like, what? Might as well just share the secret with everybody. It's better that way. This is actually genius. I'm gonna walk on my notes. So here we have my notes, and it already goes in the spirit of Boise because it's like a community effort speech, right? Like, here we go. I'm like talking from other people. Rob started going on a tangent. I'm like, this is it. Like, you're writing my speech right now. This is perfect. And he starts going off, and I'm like, he's like, yeah, make sure you touch on this and that. So here we go. Let's see if I can pull this one. But I'm standing on my notes. So this whole thing came together. I just want to say, because there's certain things I don't want to forget, because I can ramble. Road skate park. I mean, seriously, I travel the world. I go to countless skate parks from every nook and cranny of this earth. And this is a blessing. It doesn't matter where this park was. Let's just say this park was in LA, this park was in New York City. This is, just so everybody's clear, one of the greatest skate parks on planet Earth. It is absolutely incredible. I rolled up on this thing and I was shocked. And it's in Boise, right? It's in Idaho. It was just like, wow. And being a hardcore skater, you know, I just was just blown away by the blueprint. And I'll get into that, but I don't want to forget to tell you guys, because a lot of people say to me, like, really, is it as good as people say it is? I'm like, no, like, literally, this is like, it's debatably one of, I could almost confidently say it's the greatest skate park on Earth, but it's subjective, so I'll say it's one of, just depending on how you skate. But in my opinion, it probably is the greatest skate park on Earth. So today what I wanted to talk about, just kind of to keep myself focused, is I'm going to talk about me, which I don't like using the word me, by the way. I hate the word me. Hate's a powerful word. Me is a bad word in my opinion. In our opinion. And you really want to flip the M into a W and say we. So this is a story about we, a tree, a company, and Boise. That's how I'm going to try to break this down if I can stay on track. And the first thing I wanted to do to stay on track is just quickly a show of hands. How many people here know of Element prior to today? The brand Element, okay. And how many people here at some point in their lifetime have stood with both feet on a skateboard? Okay, that's awesome. That's really good. So now I'm getting so you've stood on a skateboard, there we go, see? There we go. Now that means we're gonna get you to drop in. I'm gonna teach you how to drop in. So what I'm going to do that I think will be healthy and just sort of fun for a second is when you think of like Apple and you think of Nike and you think of these really big brands, I think the logo is really pretty important. And it means a lot, especially to founders. And very often founders aren't still around or have left the organizations, et cetera. And so to hear the story of a logo, I think it's pretty deep stuff. And typically, it comes from a founder, it comes from a deeper place, and I would like to share that with you. So the definition of Element, does anyone here know the definition of Element? Wow, Boise State University, nobody knows the definition of Element? I'm underestimating stuff. Camp, what is it? That's my son. Wind, water, fire, earth. So the definition of element is one of the four substances to compose the physical universe: wind, water, fire, earth. So I'll get into like where that came from, but the main point of that is that we are all an element. This mic is an element. The air we breathe is an element, and my competitors are an element. So we already trump them by name. we are them. Like, their product is an element, so our logo like stands on top of their logo. It's pretty cool. But I'll get down here real fast. I'm a bit of a try to think of myself as an artist sometimes. So I heard a story when I was a kid. My dad was really into nature. He's a tough guy, and I'll talk about that a lot. But the greatest gift he ever gave me was camping and an appreciation for nature. Spent a lot of time in the East Coast in Vermont, New Hampshire, and really loved trees and being out there in the wilderness. So I always had a great appreciation for the great outdoors. And why that's important to tell you is that when someone told me this story, if I didn't appreciate nature, I probably wouldn't have heard the story. And that's something I never really had thought about. Because I'm like, well, if you didn't really care about trees and nature, the story I'm about to tell you probably wouldn't matter. But when someone told me the story, it really sunk in my youth. And they said something along the lines of, do you realize that this tree you're looking at has been here for thousands of years? And that every forest fire, every natural disaster, every war, this thing has just stood the test of time. And the tree itself was like, it was like a sequoia, and it was just massive. And then the trunk just was, you could drive a car through it. And then the person, to put it to scale, and I know you guys have all seen this in the City of Trees, of course, the person's like standing next to it, and then the tree's all charcoaled out and burnt, and so on, and it's just lived through hell and back. But somehow, it just keeps growing. It just keeps living life, and every tree is different. Every tree is unique. It's got branches that break. It just, everything about this tree is it endures the elements, no matter what. And so this story always sat with me deeply, because as I tell you a little bit about my childhood, I always felt like I was that tree. Like I was going to grow. This tree was like a little story for me that I kept in the back of my head, where I'm like, well, I'm like a tree, and I'm going to endure this, and I can grow through this, and I can get through this. Like somehow I related to this tree. And then by coincidence, it really is, which came later, and it's kind of like the backstory of Element that a lot of people don't know, is that trees are, obviously, skateboards are made from trees, and what a happy coincidence. But the tree story stood with me before that. And I like to share that because I just think that I look at my life like the tree, and even though it's got it's been through a lot, I've got those roots, and no matter what, I'm going to grow and figure things out, losing limbs through the process, but they'll grow back. So then back to the logo, when I got this sort of harebrained idea to start a brand, the first thing was this definition of element. And when you think of like polo, I'll just use that as an example. You use a P, P for polo. I'm like living in New York, rapper kid, like skating in the streets, like, so I'm like, yeah, P for polo, E for element. So the first thing that happened was I drew an E. And here I am like a graffiti artist, I know how to sketch, and that's like how far my brain capacity was able to go. And I'm like, that is really boring. Like, it might be cool for like a year or for like a university, but this is a brand with a lot of things going on. That ain't gonna happen. So the E turned into a worse E, actually. And then I was like, oh, there's an E, like there's a little tree in the E. That'll be cool. And then I'm like looking at it, and I'm like, that's pretty weak. That was like about 48 hours of, that's pretty weak. Then after another 48 hours, like my brain had like an epiphany. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's a tree, and let's just go all the way. Maybe one day someone will see that E in the tree, I don't know. And what's funny is most people don't. And then being, knowing this thing's gonna be embroidered on hats and be floating on shirts, and I start getting into like the merchandising brain, and I'm like, we need to put this thing in a circle so it can sell. And then I'm like, and the definition of element is wind, water, fire, earth. So I add the water, and I add the fire, and the tree is the earth, and the logo is born. And I think that's always a kind of a fun story to tell, because it's not often you get the guy that drew the tree logo. And it was funny, one of the kids this morning was like, how much did it cost? That was his question. How much did it cost for you to do the logo? And I was like, it was free. I was like the cheapest thing I've ever done. God knows that it was going to go and be what it is today. So I wanted to share that with you. So back to me, I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about my background. And I don't really need, I think this morning was like, it makes me feel like the world's smallest violin, because you hear what these other kids have been through, and would I never want to compare myself to these other guys. But, my dad was a military guy. He had a serious drinking problem. My mom was irresponsible. I was essentially left to fend for myself most of my young adult life. This is a we, because my sister raised me. My parents were absent, and she, funny, I said this morning too. She managed to allow me to eat an entire box of cereal every morning for breakfast. I didn't eat lunch because no one made me lunch. And we would eat frozen pizza and tater tots for dinner, because that's what we ate when you don't know how to cook and there's no real parental supervision. And with that, I kind of made my own path. And we had to make my own choices. And my father, because he was a military guy, I went to 4 different junior highs, 4 elementary schools, 4 high schools, something along those lines. But a lot of moving around is sort of the point of the story. And I never really could find my place, because every time we'd go anywhere, I just have to uplift again and go somewhere else. And it was, that's a tough life as a kid, trying to deal with that. And especially without having any real parents to kind of like help you cope with something on that level. So when I was about 4, my sister was skateboarding just for entertainment. And she gave me her first skateboard, just kind of a hand-me-down. It was like a Target, Walmart skateboard. And I know everybody here has seen the movie Jaws, and I find it really comical that Jaws was my first skateboard. It was this blue plastic skateboard that was a promotional item for the movie, and it was this plastic POS with the woman swimming on the top and the shark coming up underneath, and it says Jaws. And that was actually my skateboard for like 7 years. So as we're bouncing around from place to place through my entire childhood, I had this Jaws board that became like my means of transportation. It became like my way to just get around. I was like, thank God she didn't give me roller skates or something. I mean, it was just this transportation device. But I really loved the way it made me feel, and I never wanted to be home because of everything I had mentioned earlier. And it became like my thing. Like I just would skate everywhere. And I got really good at just cruising. Like I didn't even know there was a magazine, there was a culture, any of this. It was back in like the 80s, the late 70s. And there was a culture kind of developing, but I was moving from Kentucky to Ohio to upstate New York to Germany. I'm not gonna be able to keep up with these type of things. But I loved my skateboard. So what happened that was interesting was one day I'm in an urban area, and I'm on my little Jaws board, and a kid comes up to me, and I'm looking at the audience so I can kind of go with this and you guys will get it. He like comes up to me and he's like, "Shaka bra," like total California kid with like neon pink, weird like parachute pants and like a gotcha t-shirt. And he's like total surfer, 80s, like, Spicoli type dude, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And I'm actually a New York kid at that point. And I'm like kind of gritty, grew up on my own. I'm a little like rough around the edges, and I'm kind of like looking at this guy like, but here I have this weak Jaws board, like totally cramping my style because I'm like kind of thuggy and pretty protective about letting anybody in at this point in my life. I was a bit of a loner. And going back to Rhodes and this morning, this kid came up, and in the spirit of skateboarding, which is still the spirit of skateboarding today, I mean, we couldn't have been more different. And he's like, come with me. And I joke because the parental supervision back then is ridiculous because I'm like 12. I jump in a car with this dude who's like on the freeway and we're just like driving and he's like, I'm going to show you what skateboarding is. And I'm like, sick. He's like, do you want to call your parents and see if it's okay? I'm like, no, don't worry about that. We're all good. Let's just go. So he takes me on like a skate tour of like, this is skateboarding. And he's laughing because I'm actually as good as a lot of these kids on this silly Jaws board. And that's one of the reasons because he saw me on the boardwalk. And I'm just like, just powering it, just like, and fully, clearly could skate. And I think one thing you notice about skateboarding, anyone who's been around it, people can get on a board and you can always tell within seconds if they've spent some time on it or if they have. Doesn't matter what kind of skateboard it is. You can always tell like time served. And I think that's where he was like, this guy like put some time in, like you can tell, even on a Jaws board. And so I go to these skate parks. He takes me to a skate shop. I see a Thrasher magazine. I watch these videos, all in like he befriended me, and like this is all like within 48 hours. I'm like, oh my God, this is a world. This is actually a culture. This is like real. And that, like within a few weeks, I got my first real skateboard at a real skate shop, and I like started going to the park, and all of a sudden I had friends, and I started having this crew that I hung out with. Not a single kid in our crew was from the same high school because we were all basically rejects from our high school because we didn't play football, we didn't play baseball, we didn't do any of that stuff. We couldn't afford it, we didn't have parental supervision. But then you'd have kids from like upper class, middle class, lower class, all colors and creeds, all at these parks, and we're skating in the streets, and like all of a sudden I was part of something. For the first time in my life, I had something. And it was just like unbelievable. And then from that day forward, even though I had skated for years, I skated forever. Like, that's it. Like, and that's the story of me. And the story of the tree, I told you, but the story of the tree is more important because the story of the tree is the tree growing from the ground. But the story of the tree is that trees don't grow by themselves, right? The tree is like part of something much bigger. And it's funny, I was talking to, sorry, I'm putting you guys on the spot, Rob and Jamie, but it was a really deep conversation, right? We got really deep. And I was like, should I go there? Should I not? I'm going to go there. I don't, I'm all there, I promise. I think I am. Ask my wife. So like when a baby's born, what people don't realize is that a baby actually doesn't know that it's a baby. It thinks it's like a lens to the world. It takes months for a child to know that it's actually a singular object. The child actually thinks that it's like a scope to the world. And so eventually, you're like, oh, that's my hand. That's mine. These are my clothes. And the reason I bring it up is that the story of me and a tree is that this tree didn't happen by itself. This tree is way bigger than me. Like, I'm like this guy that's standing up here, and a lot of times people will talk to me, and I almost feel like they're talking to somebody sitting next to me. Because I'm like, hold on a minute. That's me? You're like, what? Like, that's me. No, that's we. That's not me. That's we. That's we. I didn't do all this. I like you saw in the video, like all those people is how that tree was built. All these wonderful skaters that shared the world with me, that's how that tree was built. Like this logo right here is like, I want to stand behind it. I want to hide behind it sometimes. Because I'm up here and I'm very blessed. But I think the story of the tree that's so important is the tree is about we. A tree has roots. A tree has limbs. A tree is about growing. You don't grow by yourself. You don't have roots alone. You don't water yourself, You don't. And then at the same time, you provide shade for other people. A tree is so elaborate, and a lot of times people will say to me like, what's the answer? Why or why? What's the answer and so on. And I'm always like, hey, there's only two answers. It's right here and it's out there. Like that's it. It's here and it's there, and you got to dig deep and you got to go wide. And that's why I want to say it's about me, a tree, and a company. And the company, it kind of goes back to the same thing. Like, you have to have a purpose. Like, I really believe that. And I know later today I'm going to speak to some entrepreneurs about things like this. But, this is where I might get a little edgy, make people feel a little uncomfortable. But it's my duty to talk about this, is that the world is filled with so many lies and so much false information and so much product consumption and so much, and the chains and the way that people are fed this information now is so intense. And then you just go back to it, and I know, Roger, you've heard me say it now, I've gone ballistic on it. I'm like, it's all about the analog movement. It's all about the analog movement. Back to paper, back to touching things and walking on your speech and skating in the park. And you notice that kids are like, dude, I want to turn my phone off. Like, people are bugging me. And like, people are into vinyl and tape and tapes and back to like the grit, right? And to me, that's a company, right? When you build a company, you build it with your own two hands. You build it with your heart. You build it with passion. And I believe this, honestly. I really hope this happens. That, using getting a little skate on everybody, but all the posers are out, right? Because every company, everything should be done for a reason, with purpose and heart. And anything that isn't is not true. And everything we do, not to get into this like lecture of how everyone should live their life, but if people say, how did you get here? So it's me, Tree, and a company. It really wasn't that hard. It was a lot of hard work. Many, many hours sleeping on a couch, pulling all-nighters. But you know what? The boring part of my business is actually the money, the success, the stories of like now. Like, I like the story that I just told you guys. I like the story about tomorrow. I like the story about where we're about to go and more things we're going to do to break down the walls and change what happened this morning at the detention center. And to me, it's critical that a company has purpose, right? And I thought, I'm going to do it because when I was talking to Jamie about this, I was like, well, what a coincidence. Me, Tree, a company in Boise, that's four elements. Wind, water, fire, earth. Like wind, you are a baby. You don't know who you are. You're transparent. You can be developed. You're not one yet. And then you're like water, the tree. It's watering the tree. It's providing the nourishment to grow. And the fact that you start finding your path, these rivers, they cut through things and they find their place because they're shaping who you are and where you go, and you're learning. And then the company is like the fire. Like, there's a lot of people that talk about a company or talk about wanting to do something or be something. Talk is okay because that's the river of ideas, the flowing of ideas. But the company, like starting that business or starting that nonprofit or dropping in on a ramp for your first time, that's the fire. That's the action. That's like hardcore. Like when you go into fire, that's like the danger zone. It's hardcore stuff, man. You're like, you know what, here's the line, here's all these ideas, here's the me, the wind, the water. I've learned all these things. I was a baby, and now I'm learning where I want to go and what I want to be, and I'm following this path, and this is great, but now I am about to do this shit. I'm going to do it. And you do it. And that takes passion. And that's the company. And so get in the spirit of sticking to the theme, wind, water, fire, earth, Boise. I'm going to talk a little bit about Boise. Boise, Idaho and Boise, is earth to me. You hear me talk about living all over the world and traveling and so on, and nature and skateboarding and the community saved my life. And there's a lot of people in this room I would love to give credit to. But what happened that's I could probably get choked up on this one. I'm with my wife, and we are invited to a wedding. And we had really been looking to change our lives a bit. And we are living in Southern California, which is a beautiful place. I don't want to say anything negative. I'll let you guys go through like 2 or 3 episodes of 9010210 and Orange County Housewives, and then you can come to your own conclusions. But so we needed a break, and we're looking around, kind of, we need some change. And we were sort of exploring the earth, really the globe, to be honest with you. And after all this, to tell you the truth, we were a little disappointed about where the world was going. And wow, this is viral. There's not a lot of places that are special anymore. And we get invited to this wedding by Amy Purdy, and there's a whole backstory about Amy that's beautiful, but we're invited to a close friend's wedding. We're really gosh, we're so busy. Idaho, really? We're going to go to Idaho? Okay, it'll be fun. And Amy had always been saying we would love Idaho, and you have no idea. And we'd known Amy for 10 years at this point, and her family lives here, of course. So we get off the plane. It's late at night, and we're walking down the runway, or the little airport, which I also love. Flying to London and all these other crazy places in New York, JFK, LA. I walk into the Boise airport, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And we have that, what is it called, pre-check? Which you don't need. It's pre-check, I'm looking at I'm in pre-check, and it's moving faster over there. So we're walking through, and it's welcome to the city of trees. And I'm like, Corey, it's pitch black out. We don't know we're in the city. I'm like, that is super weird. I'm even hey, take a picture of me in front of the city of trees. I'm like, this is really funny, city trees. And so we haven't seen the city of trees yet. It's dark. And I don't know the actual order of events, but this is more important because it just tells you about the magic of Boise, Idaho, is that I'm downtown dressed just like this, right? I'm known for a uniform. So next time you meet me, you'll be like, does he wear the same clothes twice? Yes. So maybe Blake should tell the story better, because this is how I take the story. I'm lost in downtown Boise. I decide to go on a bike ride. Corey's back at the room watching a movie or something, and I'm like, I'm just going to go explore on my bike. It's late. I'm just going to go out. I like to hike and bike ride and things like that. So I just go on a bike ride. Don't have lights. Don't know there's a law about lights on bikes. and leave it to the studious authority in the Boise area. Officer Blake Slater pulls me over on my bike and says, excuse me, can I help you? Are you lost? I'm like, actually, I am completely lost. And I'm over by the skate park with the what's going on over there, and I'm like, yeah, I'm lost, and I need to get me out of here. Where do I go? And Blake and I start talking further, and I share with him somehow. I share what I do, and Blake takes me over to the skate park, and I'm flabbergasted. I just see this 2-block square radius with a fence up and all this construction in the middle of the night in the freezing cold, and I see the diagram or the architect's plan of the park, and I'm like, this is, what in the world? Here? I can't even believe this. So I go back, Blake and I exchange numbers. He's a gentleman. He actually gives me a tour of Boise on his bike, and friendliest guy in the world, Officer Blake Slater. I don't even know how to call him Blake. I refuse to call him Blake. And so that leads to waking up in the morning, and I'm like, oh my, look at this place. I already was sold, I told Corey in the room, we're moving here. This is insane. Look at this skate park. Can you imagine? It's in the city of trees. I haven't even seen a tree yet. And then we go to this beautiful wedding, and where exactly was the wedding? It was Hidden Springs, yeah. So we go to this wedding in Hidden Springs, and it's absolutely gorgeous, and all the hustle, and we, within, 48 hours, we're just wow. So then I get the harebrained idea of, we could do something here. This could be interesting. And we start, I just start exploring. And then I meet up with Lori and the Boise Skateboard Association. And these people are extremely generous and kind. And I think I sort of overwhelm them with my entrepreneurial sort of madness of do you know what you have? And of course, they're like, well, of course we know what you have. We've been working on it for 10 years. Will you please Mr. LA, like, what are you doing? No, they were so kind. And that became really special because the emails are going back and forth with the local shops. And I'm like, wow, these guys are friends. Like, there's not this big war between the shops, and they're super friendly. And the Boise Skateboard Association is like inviting us in and really excited, and it goes from there. And then we find this beautiful space right by roads, and we have this vision of what could happen with the community. And then I want to make sure I talk a little bit about, I meet up with the Albertson's family, and Roger and Lori, and everyone is just so incredibly welcoming. And I'm like, is this a city? Like, I feel like I'm in Mayberry right now. Like, this is insane. Like, it just one thing after the next, these chain of events. And then we get the space, and my company thinks I'm mad, right? They're just like, what in the world? Boise, like, what are you talking about? But I'm showing them and sharing them photographs and video footage and so on. And we did a 5-year corporate strategy planning meeting with all the executives. We come out here. I fly them all out. We stay at local hotels and venues and so on. And they're just like, whoa, we're moving here. Like, everyone's just tripping out, like moving there, like professionally they think. And I'm like, easy. And they're also like personally, everyone just starts falling in love because they see what we're talking about. And then the other thing that happened that I think is really special, and I'll wrap this up, is that when we started building this space, and it never was called, we couldn't even figure out what to call the thing, because we were like, is it a space? Is it a community center? Is it a rec room? Like, what is this? And it was like, it's just like a hangout for skaters. Like, it's what I wish I had. A safe place to go when mom drops me off, and like, where do I sit? Where do I go? How do I stay warm? And how does mom know that I'm okay, and where to get me? And where can a kid tune up his board? And let's work with the local retailers, and let's help. Let's just have fun. And that's how I've been successful most of my life. So I've been pretty lucky with that. Let's just wing it. And that doesn't go so well in a board meeting, but I still do that. But I thought the best part of the space was that we hadn't even opened the doors yet. And every skater, every local person, not just the skaters, started flocking to help, flocking to carry, to paint, to do anything they can to build this place. And my wife and I and my children, all of a sudden, we're having tool belts, and we're working and going, and it's all just happening. And my company back in California is like, hey, do you need us to fly in the Calvary? Like, we got stores everywhere. I'm like, actually, it's under control. They're just like, what? I'm like, yeah, no, we got like all the help we need, and it's going great. And then I want to bring attention to an individual, and he's going to be uncomfortable, I'm sure. But my son becomes friends with like all these local skaters. And all of a sudden, Corey's like, oh, this is a great vacation. We got like 6 kids every night, 6 boys sleeping over. And the house is just like a madhouse with full of road skaters. And we, obviously, as parents, you want to meet the parents and talk. And, and one thing I've noticed immediately in this town is it's not like, what do you do? That's like the question that no one asks, which is so nice. It's just like, who are you? How are you? Like, how can I help is really the question people ask in Idaho. Elliot, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, but you could have mentioned this a little sooner. Elliot's dad comes in. I already met him a couple times. And finally, he just looks at me, and it's Rob. He's sitting over here. Rob, put your hand up. Rob's like, hey, I don't want to intrude, but he's super kind. And he's like, I know you know what you're doing, and you got a few stores, but I think you're kind of screwed. You might need some help. Can I help you? And I was like, yes, please help me. So what I thought was amazing is that Rob came in, and he's a true craftsman with his tools and how to build things, and his eye for detail, and makes his beautiful furniture. And he's like, well, let me just show you a couple things so you feel comfortable. And he shows me his craft, which was like beyond what I even needed. And all of a sudden, his finishing touches start going into this space, and all this incredible amounts of time, and his family get involved, and the local skaters get involved. And we are building this space. And I think that is Idaho, right? And I know I'm not a resident, and I know I'm not from here, but with everything we as a family have been through and our family values and what we stand for, we were like, I think we might be from Idaho. And so with that, my wife, God bless her, she's the most amazing woman in the world, and I love her dearly, and she's just taken this crazy journey with me. She loves it too, and we really feel like this place is home. And you guys have done that. This whole city has done that, this state. And I've never experienced anything like it in my life. And I think that's, for you guys, it isn't about me, it's about we. It's about a tree, the city of trees. It's about a company that is willing to take that leap. A lot of my employees wish it was the headquarters. It isn't yet, but it is a home base for sure, and a place that I like to call home. We like to call home. And it's about Boise and about Idaho. And I really am here to thank you guys for making bringing that rare family value to us in an actual city that's growing and it just has incredible power, and been so welcoming to us. So I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for having us. Thank you.